Imagine walking through a grocery store and realizing that nearly every aisle contains foods with one shared ingredient. Something that shows up in soda, bread, sauces, and even products marketed as healthy. At first glance, it might seem harmless, but what if that same ingredient has been repeatedly linked to serious long-term health concerns? This ingredient is high fructose corn syrup, one of the most widely used sweeteners in the United States. In fact, it is so common that most people consume it daily without even noticing it. At this point, it is deeply embedded in the American food supply, even though research continues to raise concerns about its health effects. With that in mind, the issue is no longer just about individual food choices. It is about a larger system that shapes what we consume every day. So today, I want to walk you through the issues step by step. First, we will look at how corn syrup contributes to major health problems. Next, we will examine how policy and industry systems continue to support its use. And finally, we will explore why banning corn syrup in the United States could lead to meaningful improvements in public health. So, to start off, let's look at the problem more closely. As you see in front of you, I have products that I've taken from my pantry and my refrigerator, and every single one of them has high fructose corn syrup and or other modified sugars. Everything like bread, Ritz crackers with peanut butter, peanuts, chicken cordon bleu, of course chocolate, cereal, sauces of all sorts, Heinz and Smuckers, even brands that have been around for a very long time, had some of their original ingredients replaced with high fructose corn syrup simply because it was cheaper. So with that in mind, look at these products and think about the last time that you had these or consumed these, and consciously think about, did I know that there was high fructose corn syrup in that? So first and foremost, corn syrup is not only common, it is also strongly connected to public health concerns. To put it simply, research has shown that high intake of refined carbohydrates is linked to obesity and metabolic disorders. For example, food researchers Willett and Ludwig explain that accumulating scientific evidence point towards a clear relationship between refined sugars and weight gain, along with other long-term health issues like heart disease. Building on that idea, it is important to recognize that it is not a small or isolated issue. Instead, it reflects a broader trend in dietary patterns across the United States. As processed foods have become more accessible and affordable, consumption of added sugars has increased significantly. However, moving beyond individual behavior, we also have to consider the system behind it. In other words, corn syrup is not just popular by chance, it is supported by policy. According to Alston, accredited researcher, federal agricultural policies have historically encouraged the overproduction of corn, which directly lowers the cost of corn-based sweeteners like high fructose corn syrup. As a result, it becomes cheaper for companies to use corn syrup than many natural alternatives. On top of that, industry behavior reinforces this pattern even further. The food industry has actively resisted efforts to regulate sweeteners, often through lobbying and opposition to policy changes. So when we step back and look at the bigger picture, we see a cycle. Policy supports production, production lowers cost, and industry relies on it heavily in processed foods. Therefore, if anything changes, this system is likely to continue contributing, or if nothing changes, this system is likely to continue contributing to rising obesity rates, diabetes, and other diet-related health problems. Now that we understand the problem, the next logical question is, what can actually be done about it? To move forward, it is important to recognize that solutions already exist. They just need to be applied more broadly. One possible approach is implementing stronger regulations on added sugars, including corn syrup and processed foods. For instance, researchers and health professionals like Megan Jarrett discuss how sugar-related policies, such as taxation and regulation of sweetened beverages, can reduce consumption and encourage healthier alternatives. In other words, when policy changes the cost or availability of unhealthy options, the consumer behavior tends to shift as well. In addition to that, we also need to look at the production side of the issue. What should be highlighted is how agricultural policy plays a major role in making corn syrup so widely available. So if those incentives were adjusted, it would directly reduce the dominance of corn-based sweeteners in the food supply. Furthermore, it is important to understand that the food industry is not static. Instead, it responds to pressure and regulation. To no surprise, companies often resist change at first, but they do adapt when policies or consumer expectations shift. Putting all of this together, it becomes clear that banning or significantly reducing corn syrup is not unrealistic. Rather, it would involve coordinated policy changes, industry adjustment, and increased public awareness. So now that we've discussed a possible solution, let's consider what the impact of that change would actually look like. To begin imagining the outcome, consider what would happen if corn syrup were significantly reduced or removed from processed foods. For one thing, food products would likely become more transparent with fewer hidden sources of added sugar, and as a result, consumers would have a better chance of making informed dietary decisions. In addition to that, public health outcomes could improve over time. According to Willett and Ludwig, reducing refined carbohydrate intake is associated with better metabolic health and lower risk of chronic disease. Therefore, even gradual reductions could lead to meaningful long-term benefits. So at this point, the difference between action and inaction become very clear. With that in mind, it is important to move from understanding to action. It may be hard to put into action, but you can start by becoming more aware of what is in your food. Take time to read labels and recognize how often corn syrup appears in everyday products. Secondly, support policies that aim to reduce added sugars in processed foods. Whether through regulation, labeling, or reform efforts, policy change plays a major role in shaping the food system. Finally, share this awareness with others. Even small conversations can help shift how people think about what they consume. In short, change begins with awareness, but it grows through action. To bring everything together, corn syrup is not just another ingredient, but is a part of a larger system that influences public health, food production, and everyday nutrition in the United States. Throughout this discussion, we've seen how research links refined sugars to serious health concerns, how policy and industry contribute to their widespread use, and how change is both possible and supported by existing solutions. So ultimately, if we want to improve public health in a meaningful way, reducing or eliminating corn syrup is a step worth seriously considering. And to leave you with this final thought, the choices we make about our food system today will directly shape the health of our future generations tomorrow. If corn syrup is continuously linked to chronic illnesses and obesity over multiple decades, why is it still in a large portion of our foods? Thank you.